Hi, welcome to the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. Today I have a family member, a very smart and handsome family member, my nephew Alex. Welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
So Alex has a really interesting path that I think he's taken in life, where he was writing some blogs or just articles about music. And Alex, I'll say, is a huge Swiftie, a big Taylor Swift fan. And he started off doing some writing, and then he discovered TikTok. And all of a sudden, I looked this morning, and he's at almost 60,000 followers. So we were going to
Wow.
talk about that journey, and we also want to talk about some of the other things that's happened, where he got picked up for a Target ad, and he's also getting some other sponsorship deals and stuff. And I think he is just not because he's my nephew, but I think he's just amazing. His lives on TikTok and the videos he does, and we'll talk about that. So Alex, tell me how you kind of got started. Like, why were you so interested in music and really kind of wanting to write about these artists and stuff? Tell me about that.
Yeah. I've always been a huge music fan
Hmm.
from as early as I can remember, going back to like elementary school and just like listening to Radio Disney as much as I could and paying
Hmm.
attention to what songs were blowing up and which ones weren't. And then probably around end of middle school, high school is when I first like joined Twitter and joined social media because that's when the big boom was really happening. And
Yeah.
I just got really into tracking like the pop radio charts and understanding for my favorite artists how their new singles were performed based on if they put out a music video or when they went on Jimmy Fallon or Kimmel or whatever talk shows at night, and how promotional tactics would impact chart performance and radio placements and all that. And that just kind of got me hooked because it's such a game and it is also such a community behind like fan culture, which was a new thing to me at the time. And from there, I just always was interested. With the rise of streaming, I got big on Spotify and was making my own playlists to express my music taste, depending on like the mood or the time of year, even or the
Yeah.
color, even now today. And during the pandemic, when everything kind of stopped, I got deeper and deeper into music. And ironically, I always joke with my friends who care about music that like 2020 was the worst year for us, but like it was an incredible year for music.
Yeah.
And I would just spend my time reading reviews that professional music journalists would write and publish on Pitchfork, Rolling Stone, Billboard. And I started noticing that the things that they were picking up on, I had also thought to myself. Or if there
Yeah.
was a certain, like a song that I thought was the best because of like critical aspects, to see them, agree with that made me feel a little bit more legit in my own, beliefs in what I was hearing.
Yeah.
So I'd always had an interest in writing. I did writing classes throughout middle school and high school and wrote in college for the local paper and kind of wanted to take my own stab at it. So I published my own little review blog and just at first was just typing these up in Google Docs and sending them out to friends through like iMessage to just read what I wrote.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of really positive feedback. So I ended up putting it online and uh, that's kind of how it got started.
And then how did you kind of switch over from, because again, I stumbled on your lives on TikTok, I think by accident.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, so I was there and I just kind of listened in the background for the first time or something. And I was like, wow, he's so professional and he's so good. And your audience was so engaged by it. So, like, how did you kind of discover that you wanted to do this and that you had that talent to kind of, because doing a live is not easy.
Um, it's actually ironic now looking back at it, but when I started up with all of this was right when TikTok was booming in 2020 during the pandemic, and I
Yeah.
would roll my eyes at my siblings who were addicted to it, and I'm like, what is
Yeah.
this crap? Like, it's never going to last. Here we are 4 years later, and I make a living off of it now. So
Yeah.
that's a joke. But I started off because I started feeling frustrated that the writing I was doing, it was long form articles, like 1,000 word reviews.
Hmm.
I knew people either were reading it to please me or like no one was going out of their way to find it. There
Yeah.
wasn't any marketing I was putting behind the review site. It was all just me sending the link when I would post something to friends and family. And I realized if I want to actually connect with people, I need to be doing this on a wider scale with a social media platform that is going to do the outreach for me. And that
Yeah.
is the greatest thing about TikTok is you can post whatever you want and then the algorithm does its thing and delivers that content to the people who are most likely to be interested in it. but I knew I couldn't be posting 1,000-word reviews on TikTok. So it had to
Yeah.
be a little bit more succinct and more niched down at first. And also during the pandemic, I got really into collecting vinyl records because during the pandemic, I couldn't go to concerts. I wanted a way to support my favorite artists through merch that I could buy of theirs when they were
Hmm.
struggling. And the main reason why I bought them at first was because I was going to be moving into my own apartment for the first time in the studio that I'm now in. And I
Yeah.
wanted to buy like 12 by 12 big prints of my favorite albums to use as decor in the apartment.
Yeah.
So I saw, oh, this Taylor Swift record for Folklore is there's a beige one, there's a light gray one, there's a dark
Yeah.
gray one. Those are the colors of my apartment like furniture. So I'm like, great, decor pieces. But then I started seeing on TikTok there are people who post about them, and there's a whole community of people who support vinyl and are really invested in it, and not just fueled the addiction from there. So what ultimately became was I was posting about my vinyl record collection, but I did not want to use my face. I did not use my real name. I didn't have any distinguishing features. It was
Yeah.
all either just like showing a product and never the camera behind on me. I would never use my own voice until almost a year later is the first time I actually
Why?
said,
Why was that?
I think just growing up in the time that I did, there was so much pressure and like emphasis also from my parents on like internet security.
Oh,
And,
I see.
like there was so much talk about just like creepy people out there. And also there was pressure in my own head of like, you don't want to be that person from high school. If like people from high school see that you're trying to make it on social media, like
Oh,
there's a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit of a
I get
stigma
you.
with it. So I never really pursued it from that angle. And then I realized after posting for about a year, I had gained I think about 5,000 followers just from doing it with my own hands and eventually my voice,
Yeah.
but never my face. And I realized the people who were really successful with this were in front of the camera because
Yeah.
not only was the content they were posting connecting, but them as a human was connecting.
Hmm.
So I got in front and it's been a ride since then.
Yeah. And were you shocked? I remember when you hit 40,000 followers, and I don't know if you or your mother or somebody told me about it, but I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And then, I mean, were you shocked when this just started growing like this so rapidly?
Yeah, it wasn't expected, and it really started off purely as just It kind of combined all of my favorite things: music, records, online social media and community,
Hmm.
and just like having a platform to express video. Like grew up when like the boom of YouTube happened, so I loved
Yeah.
making my own YouTube videos and editing. I worked on like the video yearbook for my high school and was editing things in iMovie, so I've always had like that passion for filmmaking.
Yeah.
Um, and this was just like a perfect storm of all of it coming together. So it was a nice outlet for it. I never started doing it thinking I'm going to get to a point where like I have tens of thousands of followers and I'm working with brands. It
Yeah.
was purely started from a place of just like passion.
And tell me why vinyl? Why vinyl compared to streaming or um, you know, cassettes or
Yeah.
whatever? I mean, why vinyl? Because it's it's old school, and I get it. I have a record player and I have records as well, and I grew up on records actually. But why is that the new thing now with you?
Um, like I said before, it originally started with like apartment decor as the main
Hmm.
reason, but then seeing the community and how there's like a whole market for it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like it was nothing then compared to what it's become today in
Yeah.
just 4 years. It's crazy how much it's grown. But like all the different colors it comes in and the limited edition variants of it. Some of them come with signed posters and signed prints from the artist. A lot of them have a huge resale value also. Some of them that I have, there's a Taylor Swift one that I have that I bought for $35 and now resells for 750. So
Wow.
like there's a huge market behind it. And I never buy them to just flat out resell them, but like I enjoy having it in my apartment, and when I have friends over and I have my record player and we want to pick an album to listen to, it feels more tangible
Yeah.
than
I
just
mean,
throwing Spotify on.
even when you're doing your lives on TikTok or you're doing your videos, you kind of have that whole little setup where you have the record kind of displaying and the record player in the background. I mean, you've got a good
Right there.
setup. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Tell me how Target picked you up though whenever the Taylor Swift album came out, because that's pretty
Mm.
amazing to have a company that large come and want to use you as part of their advertisement.
Yeah, I still to this day have no idea how they found me. I think it was just a random video that happened to come across their For You page, someone,
Yep.
or the agency they worked with. What I've since learned about how this whole world works is at the time I was like a nano influencer. I think I had 5,000 followers when Target and I worked together, and this was within a year plus of me doing this. It was my
Okay.
first ever brand deal. And they reached out and said, like, we want you to create a video that we'll use on our social profiles. So that is user generated content. So it's
Hmm.
not like I was posting it on my own account. I created the video, sent it to them. They posted it on their TikTok and Instagram. And they had a whole campaign around August of not really back to school, but like summer vinyl. And like if you wanted to have a record player for your dorm room, it kind of was like a two
Yep.
hand in hand thing. So they laid out like what their creative vision was, and they're like, here's a Target gift card, go pick out 5 records. You get to keep them, obviously. Go pick out an outfit that you want that you can wear in the video, and say like what you're passionate about music. So I said, like, here are the 5 albums that I'm spinning this summer. And, you know, it was a Harry's House one. It was
Hmm.
Matthew Rogers record that recently came out, a Kendrick Lamar one. And it was just so cool to be able to work with a brand that is as large as Target
Yeah.
to, I mean, this happened. They post UGC probably like every day, but just to be having that experience was just
Yeah.
very, very cool and like legitimizing it.
Did they give you analytics on how well your videos did?
I believe so. I don't remember exactly, but you can go on and see on the profile that it
Yeah.
has like over 700,000 views. I'm like,
Wow.
that's crazy.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, doesn't that make you it's kind of scary that you can
It's
get your,
horrifying
yeah.
that
I
like
mean,
almost a million people, and like even my own videos that have hundreds of thousands or a million plus views, like there's a million, 2 million people who have seen my face. Like that's
yeah.
more than the population of certain cities. That's more people who watch like an episode of cable TV these days. The average cable show may get like a million or 2 million viewers.
I mean, what are you going to do whenever you're walking down the street in New York one day and somebody recognizes you? Has that happened yet?
It has happened. It has
And what do you
happened
do? What's your
a bunch of
reaction?
times. Um, I'm very happy about it because it's cool to see like this whole thing, and you may be able to relate to part of this, but it's very isolating at times
Hmm.
because you know it's you sitting at a chair in your room talking to a phone or talking to a camera.
Yep.
You put it out there; it's all digitized on these things, and you know people comment, and you have text showing up on a screen that shows people are seeing this. But when you actually meet another human being who is
Yeah.
connecting and like knows who you are and knows what you're doing, that is so much more valuable than getting 100 comments on a video.
Yeah.
So I was literally walking around the streets of Chinatown, what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago at this point, and my friends and I had just left to dinner, and we're walking up the street, and some guy was with a friend. They were walking home from work, and he full on screams in the street, "Oh my God, it's Vital by Mars!" And starts freaking out. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is so cool and
I
just like
love that for you,
exciting.
though. That's exciting.
Yeah, he's like, you have no idea who I am, but I want to say hi. I'm like, please say hi. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't bite.
I mean, I've run into some people that I follow on TikTok, and I went to this. There's this pharma out event called Out Bio, and there's a guy in Massachusetts that does all these things. Like I'm from Massachusetts, and it's kind of doing stereotypical Massachusetts
Yeah,
Boston things. And I walked up to him. I'm like, "Oh my God, you're the guy from TikTok." He goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Do people recognize you?" He goes, "More people than you would think." Like he goes, "Yeah." He goes, I'm like, "Does it bother you?" He goes, "No." He like, "It's cool."
yeah.
And it was
I've
just,
I've learned the difference between someone checking you out and someone who recognizes you. There's a
yeah,
different look. There's a
yeah,
very different look. Sometimes I'll be out and I'll catch someone. I'm always walking around noticing, people. I like people watching, so I'll be able to see when someone looks and then they look down at their phone and then they look back up, or like they'll pretend they're not looking but they are.
yeah,
It's a different kind of glare.
yeah. Tell me about, I with my podcast out, I get some strange DMs from people. Tell me about some of the DMs and comments that you get. I mean, I think it's
Oh, yeah.
just some of them you have to just laugh at and it's hysterical, and other ones you're just like, well, you're so creepy. Like, why would you even think
Yeah.
about sending that? So, like, what's the weirdest comment you got?
Oh boy. Do you censor things on here?
You can be open as much as you want, I guess.
Okay. Um, from some of my lives, there are people who will join and have a lot of free time on their hands.
Yeah.
And I was doing a live, I think around Thanksgiving time, Someone came in, was making some very inappropriate comments in the live, blocked them from the live. They instantly made a new TikTok account with my face from the live screenshotted as the icon, made a fake account using that, came back, continued to comment the same very vulgar things, blocked again, made a third account.
Oh my God.
The same thing happened, made a fourth account. This is all within the span of like an hour. And I get off the live and I see a bunch of messages and basically saying that this person is, if I don't either, I forget what their ask was. It was either like send them something, like send them money or follow them back. Or if I didn't, they were going to use like AI software to create deep fake porn of myself using my face from my live. So I blocked the person again and immediately changed the settings on TikTok so not everybody can message me. Now it has to go through like a request thing. Otherwise,
Yeah.
that would happen again. Reported it to TikTok. They did absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, what it's like, what do they get out of that? You know, like it's so weird. Like, I mean, what do you
People have a lot of free time on their hands.
yeah, I agree. People have a lot of free time and it's kind of sad. I feel bad for them in a way because that's like what they're doing. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
some of the people that come on, and most people on your live though
Are very supportive and are
are
very
and
nice.
they're interested in what you're talking about, and they're
Yeah.
they're Taylor Swift fans, or they're asking about other artists and stuff. So for the most part, I've seen your lives, and they people have been respectful. I've seen a few people that were idiots, but
Yeah.
for the most part, it's people are like on there to
Totally.
socialize with you about what you want to talk about. So that's
And
great.
it's also it's for me it's actually less about myself. It's more about me using whatever platform I have to allow people together, like who are in it, to
Yeah,
connect with each other.
you're
Because at
building
the
the
end of the day,
community.
exactly. And like if I have a role in connecting people who are passionate about the same thing, then that's such a reward for me. And just knowing that it's less about like the work that I'm doing, but if I'm contributing to something that people are gaining happiness from, like that at the end of the day is worth anything more than this. Um, they've also been really, really supportive people. There are people who always message me saying like, "What's your opinion on this?" Or
Hmm.
um, someone sent me like a holiday card as like a thank you for doing what I do. I don't remember how they got my
Yeah.
address. But they sent me a holiday card. It was very nice. I still have it. But like, yeah, it's nice.
And did you meet your friend Seth? Because I've seen you guys do kind of
Yeah,
lives, if that's what it's called, together. Did you meet off of TikTok?
we did. Yeah,
Cool, because I mean, you guys are good together, also. Because he
he is
seems to be
fantastic.
as into vinyl and music as you are, and your conversation back and forth just seems so natural, where you're on the same wavelength that when you're
Yeah.
talking about music and stuff. So,
And
like,
that's another one of the most rewarding parts about all of this is
mhm,
like making actual friends from this platform. When it first started, like because I didn't use my face in any of my videos, but all of these other smaller creators or people who I'm now friends with and are having decent sized platforms of their own,
yeah,
they were all friendly and I wasn't a part of it because I wasn't out there. And that was more motivation for me to get in front of the camera to be like a human connection
yeah,
and just started reaching out to people and being like, hey, we're both passionate about this. We're both creators in the same space. Like, what's working for you? What kind of videos aren't working for you? What's your experience been like? And with Seth and my friend Amanda and some others, like, we live in the same city. We see each other for meals. We hang out. Like, we get to go on little in the city exploration trips together to local
yeah.
bookstores or just to hang out on my couch. Like, it's nice that I'm making actual friends from this experience too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And are there people that are, I don't know, like let's say around the world that are in Tokyo that are following you? Like, are you seeing the demographics of your audience? And have people reached out to you from faraway lands, I'll call
Yeah,
it?
no, it's really crazy. I mean, I've made friends who are in Sydney, Australia. There are tons of people who I've made friends with who are in the UK and living in London and just went to all the Eras Tour shows that were there this weekend.
Yeah,
Um, there's someone from Italy who, when I was in Italy 2 summers ago, was like sending me recommendations on where to go in Milan. When I was in
that's
Europe in
awesome.
Lisbon, someone was messaging me. I posted from Lisbon. They're like, "Oh my God, we're here!" Like hopefully we get to run into you on the street or something,
Yeah,
like it really is a global thing. And that just speaks to the power of TikTok, but more so the world we live in these days. Like, the world can feel so small when you're so niched down into,
Yeah.
music, or even more niche down into vinyl, and even more niche down into pop artists and vinyl. And to know that what I'm doing in my little 500 square foot apartment is being seen by somebody on the complete opposite side of the world
Yeah.
is just crazy.
What is your thoughts about the government in the US possibly wanting to ban TikTok? I mean, I think it's ridiculous myself, but what is your thoughts? Is that your main platform to get your message out?
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about it. I surely hope it doesn't happen, because it would be harmful to both, my creativity and the brand that I'm building.
Yeah.
And it is a really important platform. Is there obviously like data issues with, the Chinese government having an influence and owning the company? Yeah, for sure. But the way I think of it is, like, I'm not putting anything out there that's so personal about myself that I need
Yeah.
to worry so much about. It's more of like the internal data. But at the end of the day, this is contributing to a greater issue in my eyes of continued confirmation bias. And because these algorithms, whether it's Reels or X's like For You page, any kind of For
Mhm.
You page is incredibly tailored to your views, your
Yeah.
political views, your passions and interests, all of that. And the power of these platforms is it is showing you content that you agree with from other people. So
Yeah.
therefore, it confirms in your head there are other people out there who think the same way you do, which is incredible. But it is also very scary, because there are people who have very deranged views of the world,
Yeah.
or have damaging political views, or so on, in other negative shapes and forms, that are continuing to feel like there are more people like them out there. Like, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing that with the rise of hate and bullying and anti-Semitism on the internet. It's
Yeah.
just contributing to a greater storm. So there are definite concerns with this kind of thing, but they're not only focused on TikTok. I think
Yeah. I
it's a
mean,
greater thing at
yeah,
play.
the anti-Semitism and the even like there's a whole, you know, anti-LGBT where they're pulling
Yeah.
down pride flags this month and
Yep.
stuff. And I'm just like, and
Yeah.
it's not just TikTok, it's every social media platform. It's on the internet and stuff. So it's whether it's TikTok or not. And
Exactly.
I don't know. I think if they took away TikTok, it would be very sad because there's people making so much money on there. That's what their livelihood is now. This is
Oh
one of
yeah, there are people who do it full time.
it's contributing billions of dollars to the economy. So I just think it would be so horrible. I really hope that TikTok comes up with an agreement somehow to fix this. So
Yeah, and especially thinking about people like small business owners who
yeah.
use social media, and especially TikTok and TikTok Shop, to grow their business.
Hmm.
Like, without it, that is incredibly detrimental.
Yeah.
So there are people who very much rely on it. And, from a business perspective, is it smart to put all your eggs in one basket? Absolutely not. But it's a massive contributor to economy and people's livelihoods, that it would be a big hit if it went away.
Yeah. What is your kind of goal? Like, what would be the right amount of followers for you? Obviously, I know it's probably if you had 2 million, you'd be really happy. But like in the next year, what would you like to see your followers be? And you have this isn't your full time job, so what would you want this to be your full time job to be an influencer at some point?
That is something I think about every single day.
Okay.
And I go back and forth on all of the questions that you just asked.
Mm-hmm.
I was always a very numbers focused person. So having, a certain number of followers was always a goal of mine.
Yeah.
First one was hitting, 1,000 followers, because
Mm-hmm.
having that extra zero was really cool. The next one was hitting 10,000 followers, because that's when you get into the creator program fund, and that's when you can start monetizing content. So
Okay.
once I hit 10K, then it was 25K. Then after 25, it was 50. I guess I could say my next big goal is 100K.
Yeah.
Um, so, working to get there, I've noticed it's a lot harder now than it was in the beginning, when like you have some massive hit. I had a huge hit series that I could guarantee that anytime I put up a post within the best worst fave, where I would say, here's an album, here's Cowboy Carter,
Yep.
here's what I think the best song is, the worst song, and my personal favorite song. And that was my way of taking the original music reviews that I wrote on my blog and turning it into short form, digestible TikTok content. I could guarantee that almost every single one of those videos would at least get 100,000 views.
And they're not doing
For
that anymore?
not at all. Now I'm lucky if it cracks 3,000.
Why? Why is that?
the algorithm just changes so much. And sometimes TikTok is really good at pushing their latest product innovations and their latest features.
Okay.
So what TikTok is trying to become more of now is a more intense competitor to YouTube. So they're pushing longer form content. So you can now post maybe like a 30-minute or an hour-long video on TikTok.
Okay.
They're going to prioritize the videos that play into these new features rather than a quick, 30-second thing.
Got
But
it.
that doesn't mean that every 30-second video is going to flop now. I also just think at a point it got repetitive and it was more about best worst fave than Mars and the greater brand that I'm
Yeah.
creating.
Hmm.
So I took a pause from it, and the algorithm just changes and shifts, and there's something you can do about it.
And if you could kind of make this show go where you would interview, and this is why I think we were talking about before we started the podcast, I think you should do your own podcast. Would
Mm.
you want to interview, what would be, I mean, obviously I know Taylor Swift would probably be your uh, gold,
Dream
premium,
one day.
platinum stamp dream
Yeah,
to interview her. But I mean, would you want to kind of interview, people in the community, or people that the roadie that worked Taylor Swift's concert to find out what was happening behind
absolutely.
the scenes and stuff? I mean, I think there's all types of people. The people, maybe an intern that worked at her record label or something, as they were helping make decisions about her new songs. Or I mean, I don't know. I think it's kind of infinite about the number of people you
Totally.
could kind of interview with. So have you thought about kind of doing something like that, where you would have a podcast or a way to interview the people, and not just kind of doing your live where you're speaking to people, but you would have the interaction with someone?
100%. I think I, for a long time, looked at TikTok lives as a way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And like with my friend Seth, we would just bounce ideas off each other. And a lot of
Yep.
people would say, like, you two should do a podcast, because we're basically, it wasn't just a live where I'm sitting there thirst trapping, like just playing a song and just
Yeah.
talking to people, like like telling them to send gifts on TikTok. That's not the kind of lives I'm into.
Yeah.
I use them as ways of talking about something that I'm passionate about in a longer form that isn't constricted to 30 seconds, a minute long video.
Mm-hmm.
So I've definitely thought about it. I am more concerned about just like the lift it would take creatively
Yeah.
and the time spent also balancing a full-time job while doing this, and knowing like how it can be tough at times to balance a social life, a professional life, and
Mm-hmm.
a social media life.
Mm-hmm.
But it is something I'm really interested in. I think that it could be a really cool opportunity to continue growing the brand and to have people tuned in for a longer form content like that. At the end of the day, I'm really passionate about what I talk about. So whatever avenue I can use to get my points across and my opinions, I think is really invigorating.
Any other artists that you see that are kind of on the cusp of being big, that are on your radar? Like, can you tell me about a
Oh
couple of
yeah.
them?
Okay. Two that are really having huge breakthrough moments right now are Sabrina Carpenter
Mm-hmm.
and Chappell Roan.
Okay.
The two of them have kind of been riding the same wave incredibly. Sabrina was a Disney star for most of her life. She was a child
It's so
actress
funny how those
on,
Disney stars really make it.
yes, and it's super interesting to compare the rise of Olivia Rodrigo to the rise of Sabrina Carpenter, because they were both Disney stars pretty much the same age.
Mm-hmm.
Olivia's was instant. Like the second driver's license came out, it hit number one, and it was the fastest rise to fame I've seen in my lifetime, at least.
Yeah.
With Sabrina, it's been the complete opposite story, where she had the support of Disney. She put out, I think, 4 records with Hollywood Records, which is Disney's record label. Didn't really do much. She left and went to Island Records under UMG
Mm-hmm.
and put out Emails I Can't Send, which was a fantastic record and was written very well. And it really started allowing fans to like see her as an artist rather than as a Disney person making music.
Yeah.
And now she's having the biggest month of her career between the success of Espresso, Please, Please, Please went number one today, her first number one single. So it's crazy to see that rise. Chappell Roan is also interestingly someone who had been around for a decently long time. I think she put out her first music 2016, 2017 or something, and then
Okay.
put out an EP in 2020. And then her most recent record, The Rise and Fall of the Midwest Princess, came out last year in September. And it's just completely skyrocketed, but it hasn't been like a instant rise to fame. And that's what's really interesting these days about the artists who are breaking through. You have, I don't want to call them one hit wonders, but you have like TikTok songs that
Yeah.
just blow up on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
And then you really don't usually hear of them again. And then you're not having, the rise to fame that like Britney Spears did with Baby One More Time or
Mm-hmm.
Gaga had with Just Dance. It isn't like a quick instant thing these days. It's being this longer narrative that's coming to shape where an artist is spending a lot of time crafting their sound, putting out a few albums, growing a fan base gradually, and then something clicks. And with Sabrina, in my eyes, it was Espresso and the singles on her last album that really allowed like her personality to shine through because she is
Okay.
hysterical. With Chapel Roan, it's complete authenticity. There's no sugarcoating. There's no cookie cutter pop star image the way that like a Dua Lipa is, where you don't really get to know her personally and she makes great music, but you'll find a lot more diehard superstar fans of a Chapel Roan than a Dua for the sake of like getting to know them on a personal level. So having like true authenticity and quirkiness is really working right now.
Do you try to see all these artists in concert or going to see them live?
I try to. The rise of ticket prices has become unbearable.
Mm.
It's become so expensive to go out and see your favorite artist, and that has definitely had me scale back. But there's nothing like live music. There's nothing like experiencing your favorite song or your favorite album with tens of thousands of people who all have that same one thing in common.
So, Alex, if you had an opportunity to actually interview Taylor Swift or one of those, like, what would be your ultimate? Obviously Taylor Swift, but who else would you ultimately want to interview? Like, what would be your top 5 guests that you
Ooh,
could interview on a podcast or even doing, a TikTok live?
like in a dream world?
In a dream world, yeah.
Okay. First name that came to mind, Miley Cyrus.
Yep.
I
Okay.
think
Love
she
that.
is so authentically raw. She is such an incredible artist, and I would love to get
Hmm.
inside her brain and understand go through each one of her albums, her eras, and understand what went into it between her aesthetic, the fashion choices, the single choices, the
Hmm.
album artwork, everything. Um,
Yep.
from like a purely musical talent perspective, Lady Gaga, I think, is just like
Hmm.
such an incredible talent, and just getting to talk to her about the music she creates and understand that. The same goes for Ariana Grande. Like
Hmm.
she is so hands-on in her work. She is mixing and mastering her own vocals, and she is comping her takes, and she is going in and layering all of her harmonies. Like she's the one sitting at the computer doing it, and I would love to learn about that. That's 3. I hmm, I don't know what his exact title is, but his name is Jason Lipschutz, and he's at Billboard. He, I think, it's
Okay.
executive director there. And the article I actually talked to NBC News about recently about Espresso and Sabrina Carpenter and it being the song of the summer, he was also interviewed for it. And I've read his reviews and read it in Billboard for as long as I can remember. So getting to learn from him from that perspective. And then the last one is actually a duo is John Caramonica and Joe Coscarelli. They host the New York Times podcast, Popcast.
Okay.
I've gone to the live taping of it. I listen to it every week. I was featured on it briefly as like a contributor, sharing information about the article they were doing on Britney Spears and the conservatorship. And I love what they do. So getting to learn about podcasting and their takes on the industry would be a really fruitful conversation.
Awesome. What would your dream job be? I'm sure you're working at your dream job now. So if your current company hears that, I'm sure they know this is your dream job. But if you could pick your second dream job, what would that dream job
Yeah,
be? Would it be working at Billboard, or would it be working at Rolling Stones, or would it be working for a record label? What would be your dream job?
I think I have two answers to that because one is more realistic than the other, and I
Okay.
am constantly torn between a state of realism and not. I think the realistic option would be being like super high up on Spotify's marketing team and leading like their brand marketing vision
Okay.
and getting to work with artists on their campaigns and like when they have an album dropping on Spotify, like what kind of extra pushes are they doing? Any kind of IRL activations to put out the album, any kind of special playlist features, any kind of special, like for, I forget when Spotify did this. I think it was around the time of Tortured Poets Department coming out for each one of Taylor's albums, the little like time tracker on when you're listening to a song.
Yeah.
They changed the color of it to represent each one of her eras. So like little tiny things like that, I'm really invested in, and I think they go a long way. In a
Spotify,
dream
listen
world,
up. Listen to
I
this
mean,
interview,
yeah.
Spotify.
In a dream world, I would love to be on Taylor Swift's team and like working with her across everything from album release planning, tour planning, single promotion, um, music video work, like me not being her manager, but being like on the greater like 13
Yeah.
management team and being able to say like,
Chief of
here,
staff.
she is our project, like getting to work with her because everyone always talks about like Kris Jenner being like this marketing genius, and she truly
Yeah.
is because she got
Yeah.
them
She is.
this family to go from relative irrelevancy
Yeah.
to the biggest household name on the
Yeah.
planet from like an entertainment perspective. Taylor Swift is also a genius marketer, and getting to learn from her because she didn't have like a conventional education. She didn't go to college like I did for marketing and
Yeah.
entertainment industry work. Like you learn from experience and doing it on the spot.
Yeah.
So getting to be a witness to that would be very, very intriguing.
And then if on top of that, if you could just be a full-time influencer and get all these brands to come and grab you, that would be pretty amazing too.
It would be cool. I
Which I think is
Everyone
very
always asks.
realistic. I think it's
I
very
know.
realistic.
I appreciate that. Everyone always says that and asks the question like, would you want to do it full time? And some days I say yes because it's super motivating when you see a video of yours take off and you connect with people and you see the numbers come in and you're making good money from it, or you're really just connecting with people and your video gets out there.
Yeah.
That's like the same way that when you post a photo on Instagram and it gets a certain number of likes, you feel that motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
But I also realize how temporary this is, that there are people who were like YouTubers a decade ago who now I don't know what they're doing,
Yeah.
that we're very much in like a very specific time period where this is
Yeah.
still fresh and new. And I just can't picture still doing this like 40 years from now, sitting on
Yeah.
TikTok talking about vinyl. The ones who are successful are the ones who use it as a platform, but then turn themselves into the brand and become a celebrity rather than an influencer. So
Yeah.
that is a path that I don't know if I'm necessarily ready for. I don't know if anyone really is ever ready for it. I'm also tend to be pessimistic, and I don't think that will ever happen for me, but it would be cool if it did.
Yeah. So two more questions before we end the podcast. First, what is your thought about Justin Timberlake getting a DUI? And because I've seen a lot of stuff on TikTok and Instagram where they're saying he's coked out and all this other stuff, and he's got what he deserves, and karma's a bitch, and he kind of got it for the stuff that he did with Britney. What is your thoughts?
I'm not far from that.
Okay.
Karma was the first thing that came to my mind. Um, this is going to ruin the tour. What
Yeah,
tour?
I mean,
The world tour. Like
yeah,
the best part about it is that the cop did not know who he was, and he says this is going to ruin the tour, and the answer from the cop is what tour?
yeah,
Couldn't have written it better myself.
yeah. I mean, I think he was on something else other than alcohol, though, personally. But who knows? I
Who
seen the
knows?
videos of it, and he seemed really out of it. So
Listen, I love a lot of his music. I think he is a really talented artist.
yeah, me
He
too.
has some great albums. The 2020 Experience, Part 1, not Part 2. Part 1 is like an all-time favorite of mine. I've seen him live. I always felt torn about supporting him, knowing
Yeah,
everything that he had contributed to, but I am a very big believer that you have to hold artists accountable, and I try to separate artistry and the person because
yeah,
we still listen to Michael Jackson music and enjoy it, but he
Yeah.
was a very, very, tough person with a lot of baggage
Yep.
and did some very wrong
Yep.
things. Um, I think with Justin, there's just been a very consistent history of using Britney to put her down to help
Yep.
his own rise. And the original point I was going to make is like, as long as the music is good and supporting and like is working, I'm
Hmm.
here. His last album was not good. And I posted a video about it and had some very, very angry 40-year-old white women going off on me for
Hmm.
tearing down the king of NSYNC. But the reality is the music was not good.
Yeah.
And I don't want to support it if it's
Yeah.
not good. In my eyes, listen, everything about music is an opinion. There
Yeah.
is no concrete, this is a good album, this is a bad album. All of it is a critical consensus from people who are either very educated in music, music theory, how
Hmm.
pop music works, what works at the time, trends, and then there's just the personal fan opinion. There are plenty of albums that I would probably say I absolutely love that people listening to this are going to say they're horrendous. I hope not. But there are albums that I think are horrendous that some of my friends think are some of the greatest things that ever happened.
Yeah, and it's generational
That's music.
too, and there's just so many factors into music and stuff. So it's just how.
Exactly. It's art, and at the end of the day,
Yeah.
art is opinion based. There's no right or wrong.
I mean, I honestly, some of the things that you've posted on your TikTok, I didn't know the artist because we're in a different generation. I went and listened to it. I'm like, oh wow,
Yeah.
that's a great song. And I took a look at your Spotify playlist and played through some of them and stuff. And some of them
Yeah.
I love, and other ones I'm like, all right, I don't really get it, but you
Yeah.
know. Just like maybe you don't get Madonna, and I wish you would talk about her. Do a episode on your TikTok about her because
Maybe for you.
all right, thank you. Because the concert that she just had was the best concert I've ever been to, and I've been to a lot of concerts.
How many
And
hours
you,
late did she come out?
when I went to see her in New York in Madison Square Garden, she was about an hour and 45 minutes late. When I seen her here in Boston, she was not as late because I actually went to go get a beer or a drink, and I'm like, oh, I got another hour, and she of course came
I was
on.
on.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I'm running down with two beers, one for my friend, one for me, trying to
Yeah.
run down because we had floor seats, and I'm like
Oh,
spilling
wow.
all over everybody, and I just kind of like ended up like throwing the beers on the floor and just like trying to get back to my seat because she came
It's
on.
Madonna.
So
Yeah.
it's Madonna, and it was such an amazing experience. So
She is the blueprint. She has
yeah,
created the legacy that allows everyone who's a pop star today to exist.
yeah. So thank you for saying that. I
Of
think that
course.
yeah,
My favorite artist would not exist without her.
yeah. Well, I want everyone that's listening to this to go and check out Alex's TikTok because I think you're going to understand why I think he's so amazing and why he has 60,000 followers. So,
Oh,
Vinyl by Mars is his TikTok name. You can also check him out on Instagram, same name, Vinyl by Mars. Check him out. Uh, when he goes into a live, if you could go into one of his lives and just take a look and just maybe sit back and listen, and maybe you'll learn something. Take a look at some of his videos, or maybe music that you never thought you would like myself, that you end up like, wow, that artist is now in my playlist on Spotify. So take a look. So
yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
thanks
Thank
so
you for
much for
having
being
me.
on, Alex. And
Thank you.
if you anything else you want to say in closing words that you'd want people to know about you?
Um,
Hi, I'm
no.
Spotify. That's what I'll say.
No, I am very grateful that you are doing this and have given me time to talk about things that I love. So I appreciate you. I love you. And I'm glad we're doing this.
Great. Thanks so much, Alex, for being on the show. Be sure to subscribe to my podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.